My daughter didn't invite me to her wedding, then asked for my beach house. You owe me this, Dad. I was standing in the kitchen making coffee when I got the email. It was a Tuesday morning in late September, and the light was coming through the window above the sink in that pale yellow way it does when autumn is just starting to settle in. I had the radio on low, some station playing oldies, and I was thinking about how I needed to change the filter in the furnace before winter hit. The coffee maker was dripping, and I was watching it because I had nothing else to do, and the silence in the house was so heavy I could feel it pressing against my eardrums. That silence had become my companion over the last 3 years. It was the only thing that never left. My phone buzzed on the counter, and I looked at it and saw it was an email from my daughter Megan. I felt that little lift in my chest that I always felt when I saw her name on my phone. Even after everything. Even after she stopped calling. Even after she stopped coming over. Even after she told me she needed space, and then took 6 months of space, and then took another 6 months, and then stopped answering my texts for weeks at a time. I still felt that lift. I still thought maybe this time she was reaching out because she missed me. I wiped my hands on my jeans and opened the email, and I read the whole thing 3 times before I understood what I was looking at. She was getting married. That was the first thing.
She was getting married to a man named Derek, who I had never met. She didn't say where the wedding was. She didn't say when. She said it was happening in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? I didn't even know she was engaged. I didn't know she was seeing anyone seriously. The last time we talked, she told me she was focusing on her career, and she didn't have time for relationships. And she sounded so sure of it that I believed her. But here it was, an email. Not even a phone call, an email telling me she was getting married, and then the next paragraph told me why she was writing. The wedding was small and intimate, and they had decided to keep it to immediate family only. Her words, immediate family only. I stared at that phrase for a long time. I am her father. I am the only parent she has left. Her mother died when she was 15, and I raised her alone. I worked double shifts at the plant for 16 years so she could have dance lessons and a decent car and a college education. I was the one who held her hair back when she got the flu. I was the one who helped her study for her SATs. I was the one who sat in the hospital waiting room for 12 hours when she had her appendix out. I am immediate family. But according to the email, I was not immediate enough. She was keeping the wedding to her fiancé's family and a few friends. She said she hoped I understood. She said it wasn't personal. She said they wanted to keep it simple and stress-free, and she knew I would want her to be happy.
She didn't ask if I wanted to come. She didn't offer to let me watch on Zoom or video call or anything. She just told me I wasn't invited. And then she moved on to the next part, which was the real reason she had reached out. She said she and Derek had found a house they wanted to buy, a beautiful old Victorian in the historic district, a fixer-upper. They were in love with it, but they needed some help with the down payment. They needed about $150,000, and she remembered that I had the beach house, the little cottage down on the Gulf that her mother and I bought when we were young and dreaming of retirement, the place where we spent summers, the place where Megan learned to swim, the place where we scattered her mother's ashes, because that was her favorite spot on earth. Megan remembered that I had that house, and she said I could sell it, or I could take out a loan against it, and I could give her the money, because she was my daughter, and this was her chance at happiness, and I owed it to her. She actually wrote those words. "You owe me this, Dad." I stood in my kitchen with my coffee getting cold, and I read that email over and over. I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body, like I was hovering near the ceiling, looking down at this old man in his flannel shirt and his worn-out slippers, staring at a phone like it had just told him the world was ending.
The coffee maker finished dripping and clicked off, and the silence rushed back in, so loud I had to sit down. I sat at my kitchen table and I tried to find the right reaction. I tried to find the anger. I tried to find the hurt. I tried to find something other than this hollow numbness that was spreading through my chest like ice water. My daughter was getting married. My daughter did not invite me to her wedding. My daughter asked me for $150,000. My daughter said I owed her. And she was right about one thing. I did owe her. I owed her everything. But not because I had failed her, because I had loved her. Because I had given her every single thing I had. Because I had emptied myself out for her and her brother for 40 years, and I had never once asked for anything in return except the chance to keep being their father. And somehow, that had turned into a debt. Somehow, my love had become an invoice. Somehow, my sacrifice had become a ledger that she was now calling due. I thought about calling her. I picked up my phone and I stared at her name, and I thought about calling her and screaming at her. I thought about calling her and begging her to let me come to her wedding. I thought about calling her and telling her I would sell the beach house in a heartbeat if she would just look at me when she said I do. I thought about all the things I could say, and then I realized none of them would matter. She had already made her decision.
She had already drawn her line. She had already decided that I was not part of her new life. She was just using me as a bank. She was just making a withdrawal from the account she thought I was supposed to keep filling for her forever. I put the phone down and I looked around my kitchen, and I saw all the things that used to mean something. The magnets on the fridge from their school projects, the photos of them at the beach, the handprint turkey from 3rd grade that was still stuck to the cabinet door because I could never bring myself to take it down. The house was full of ghosts. Every room had a memory. Every chair had someone who used to sit in it. Every hallway had footsteps that used to echo. Now it was just me. Just me and my silence, and my coffee, and my phone buzzing with emails from a daughter who didn't want me at her wedding, but still wanted my money. That was the moment I started to look back. That was the moment I started to see all the cracks I had ignored, all the tiny fractures in the foundation that I had papered over with love and hope and the desperate need to believe that my children were good. I thought about the way Megan had pulled away after her mother died. She was 15, and she was angry, and she was grieving, and I understood that. I gave her space. I gave her patience. I gave her everything I had to give. But the anger never really went away. It just got quieter. It got buried under school and friends and boys, and then college, and then a job, and then a life that didn't have room for me. I thought about the way she would roll her eyes when I called. I thought about the way she would cut our visits short. I thought about the way she stopped asking about my day and started only talking about herself. I thought about all the times I told myself she was just busy, she was just young. She would come back to me when she settled down. She would realize how much I loved her when she had kids of her own. I kept believing that. I kept holding on to that hope like a drowning man holding a piece of driftwood. And now I was watching that driftwood splinter in my hands. I thought about my son, too. My son Ryan. He was older than Megan by 3 years, and he had his own family now. A wife named Emma, 2 kids, a house in the suburbs with a white fence and a garage and a lawn that he mowed every Saturday. I used to be close to Ryan. We used to work on cars together. We used to go fishing. We used to sit on the porch and drink beer and talk about nothing and everything. But something had shifted in him too. Something had hardened. I didn't know when it started. Maybe it was when I couldn't help him with his down payment because I had just paid for Megan's college. Maybe it was when I told him I needed to focus on my health and couldn't babysit his kids every weekend. Maybe it was when Emma started whispering in his ear about how I was a burden and how they couldn't keep carrying me. I didn't know. All I knew was that the phone calls got shorter, the visits got fewer, the invitations stopped coming. They still let me see the grandkids sometimes, on holidays, on birthdays, but it was always on their terms, always at their house, always with a clock ticking in the background. They were doing me a favor, they were being generous with their time, and I smiled and I said thank you, and I hugged my grandkids, and I drove home and I cried in my truck in the garage, because I didn't know where I had gone wrong. I went back to the email. I read it one more time. "You owe me this, Dad." I sat with that sentence for a long time. I tried to understand what she meant.
I tried to understand what I had done to make her feel like I had failed her. I had worked 60 hours a week for most of my adult life. I had given up promotions because they would have meant more travel and less time with them. I had gone without new clothes so they could have new shoes. I had eaten leftovers so they could have fresh food. I had sacrificed my youth and my health and my dreams so that they could have a better life than I had. And somehow that had created a debt. Somehow that had made me the one who owed. I thought about my own father. He was a hard man, a silent man, a man who worked in a factory and came home tired and drank whiskey until he fell asleep in his chair.
He wasn't there for me the way I was there for my kids. He didn't go to my school plays. He didn't teach me to throw a baseball. He didn't hold me when I cried. I swore I would be different. I swore I would be present. I swore I would be soft. I swore I would be everything he wasn't. And I was. I was all those things. And now I was sitting in a silent house with a cold cup of coffee and an email that told me I was not even worth a seat at my own daughter's wedding. I started to think about the beach house, the little cottage on the Gulf that had been my sanctuary for 30 years, the place where I had watched the sun rise over the water 1,000 times, the place where I had taught Megan to bait a hook and Ryan to sail a little sunfish, the place where my wife and I had made love on the screened porch while the rain came down and the waves crashed, and we felt like we were the only two people in the world. That house was the one thing I had left that was purely mine. That house was the one thing that had not been tainted by the slow erosion of my family. That house was the one place I could go where I was still the man I used to be, the man who was strong, the man who was loved, the man who had a future. And my daughter wanted me to sell it. My daughter wanted me to cash it in and hand her the money so she could buy a Victorian with a man I had never met and start a new life that didn't include me. She wanted me to give away my last anchor. She wanted me to float off into the void with nothing to hold on to, and she said I owed her. I spent the rest of that day in a fog. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. I couldn't do anything but sit in my chair and stare at the wall and try to make sense of a world that had stopped making sense. I thought about calling Ryan. I thought about asking him if he knew. I thought about asking him if he had been invited to the wedding. I thought about asking him if he had known all along that I was being excluded. But I was afraid of what he would say. I was afraid he would tell me he was happy for her. I was afraid he would tell me I deserved it. I was afraid he would tell me to just move on and let her live her life. I was afraid of hearing the truth from the mouth of my own son. So I didn't call him. I just sat there in my chair and let the hours pass and watched the light fade from the sky and felt the weight of my life pressing down on me. The next day I got another email. It was from Megan again. She said she was following up to make sure I had seen her previous message. She said she and Derek were putting in an offer on the house, and they needed an answer soon. She said she hoped I would do the right thing. She said she knew I wanted her to be happy. She said she was counting on me. She didn't mention the wedding again. She didn't mention the fact that I wasn't invited. She just kept talking about the money. She just kept talking about what she needed from me.
It was like I wasn't her father anymore. It was like I was just a resource, a checking account with legs and a heartbeat and a house that was worth something. I felt the anger start to build in my chest. I felt the heat rise up my neck. I felt the thing that had been frozen inside me start to crack and melt and turn into something hot and dangerous. I wanted to write back and tell her to go to hell. I wanted to write back and tell her she was dead to me. I wanted to write back and tell her she had no idea what she had just thrown away. But I didn't. I just closed my laptop and walked out to my truck and drove to the beach house. It was a 3-hour drive. I drove with the windows down and the wind in my face and the radio turned off because I didn't want to hear any music or any voices or anything that would distract me from the rage that was building inside me. I drove through towns I had driven through 1,000 times. I passed the diner where we used to stop for pancakes on the way to the beach. I passed the gas station where Ryan learned to pump gas. I passed the old bridge where Megan used to beg me to drive faster so she could feel the dip in her stomach. The memories were everywhere. They were in the air. They were in the pavement. They were in the lines on the road that I had followed for 30 years. And every memory was a knife. Every memory was a reminder of what I had built and what I was losing.
I pulled into the driveway of the beach house, and I sat in my truck for a long time. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged a little. The storms had taken their toll. But it was still mine. It was still the one piece of the world that belonged to me. I walked up to the front door, and I put my key in the lock, and I stepped inside. And the smell of salt and wood and old summer hit me like a wave. I walked through the rooms. The living room with the big windows that faced the water, the kitchen with the old stove and the cracked tile counter, the bedroom where my wife had slept, the bedroom where Megan and Ryan had slept in their twin beds. I sat down on the couch and I looked out at the Gulf, and I watched the waves roll in and out, and I thought about all the summers we had spent here. I thought about the cookouts and the bonfires and the late nights playing cards and the early mornings walking on the beach looking for shells. I thought about the way my wife used to laugh, the way her eyes would crinkle at the corners, the way she would hold my hand and tell me she loved me, and I would believe her, because I had no reason not to. I thought about the day we scattered her ashes. I thought about standing on the sand with my kids and watching her drift away on the tide. I thought about the way Megan held my hand and told me we would be okay. We would get through this together. We were a family. She said that. She said we were a family. And now she was telling me I owed her money and I couldn't come to her wedding. I stayed at the beach house for 3 days. I didn't answer my phone. I didn't check my email. I just sat on the porch and watched the water and tried to find some peace. I thought about selling the house. I thought about just doing it, just giving her what she wanted and walking away. I thought about how easy it would be. Just sign the papers and hand over the check and go back to my empty house and let the silence swallow me whole. At least then I wouldn't have to fight. At least then I wouldn't have to hear her voice telling me I was a bad father. At least then I could tell myself I had done my duty one last time, and I was free. But I couldn't do it. Every time I thought about signing that paper, I saw my wife's face. I heard her voice. I remembered the way she looked at me when we bought that house. She was so happy. She was so full of hope. She said we would retire here. She said we would grow old together on the porch. She said we would watch our grandchildren play on the beach. And now she was gone. And our grandchildren were strangers, and my daughter was asking me to sell the last thing I had of her. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. On the 4th day, I drove back home. I walked into my house, and the silence was waiting for me. It was always waiting for me. I went to my desk, and I opened my laptop, and I wrote an email to Megan. I told her I loved her. I told her I was proud of her. I told her I wanted her to be happy more than anything in the world. And then I told her I would not sell the beach house. I would not take out a loan. I would not give her the money. I told her that house was all I had left of her mother, and I could not let it go. I told her I was sorry I couldn't help her, but I had to hold on to the one thing that still gave me some peace. I told her I wished her the best in her marriage, and I hoped she would understand. I told her I would always be her father, and I would always love her, no matter what. I hit send, and I sat there, and I waited for her response. It came 3 hours later. It was short and cold, and it broke something in me that I didn't know could break.
She said she was disappointed. She said she expected more from me. She said I had always put my own needs first, and this was just more of the same. She said I didn't understand what it meant to be a parent. She said I had failed her. She said she needed to take a step back from our relationship because she couldn't handle the negativity. She said she hoped I would come to my senses and do the right thing. She said she would give me one more chance to be the father she deserved. I read that email, and I laughed. I laughed until I couldn't breathe. I laughed until tears were streaming down my face. I laughed because it was so absurd, so grotesque, so utterly out of proportion with reality. I had spent my whole life being her father. I had given her everything.
I had sacrificed everything, and she was telling me I didn't know what it meant to be a parent. She was giving me one more chance to prove myself. She was treating me like a child who had misbehaved and needed to be forgiven. I laughed, because if I didn't laugh, I would have collapsed. I laughed because the alternative was too dark to face. And then I stopped laughing, and I sat in the silence, and I felt the loneliness wash over me like cold water. I had lost my wife. I had lost my son to his own life. And now I had lost my daughter to her own greed. I was alone. I was completely and utterly alone. I didn't hear from Megan for 6 months. Not a single phone call, not a single text, not a single email. I heard from Ryan twice. Once on my birthday when he sent a text that said, "Happy birthday," and once on Thanksgiving when he sent a text that said, "Happy Thanksgiving." He didn't invite me over. He didn't mention the wedding. He didn't ask how I was doing. I spent Thanksgiving alone. I ate a frozen dinner and watched the parade on TV, and I tried not to think about the years when the table was full of people, and the house was full of noise, and I was the center of something that mattered. I spent Christmas alone. I put up a small tree because I couldn't bear to not have one. I hung the ornaments that my kids had made in school. I looked at the little handprints and the popsicle stick stars and the glitter-covered macaroni, and I remembered when those things were the most precious objects in the world to me. Now they were just reminders of a life that was gone, a life that had abandoned me. Then, one day in February, I got a call from a lawyer. He was a family law attorney. He said he was representing my daughter, Megan, in a matter regarding the beach house. He said that Megan had hired him to explore the possibility of establishing a claim on the property. He said she believed she had a rightful interest in the house because she had been promised it in the past. He said she had documentation. He said she was prepared to take legal action if necessary. I listened to him speak, and I felt like I was falling down a well. I felt like the walls were closing in on me. I felt like the world was spinning, and I was at the center of it, just watching everything spiral away. I told the lawyer I didn't know what he was talking about. I told him I had never promised the beach house to anyone. I told him it was mine and my wife's, and my wife was dead, and it was mine alone. He said he would have his client send me the documentation. He said he hoped we could resolve this amicably. He said he would be in touch. A week later, I got a package in the mail. It was a thick envelope from the law firm. I opened it with hands that were shaking. Inside, there was a copy of a handwritten note. It was from my wife. It was dated a few months before she died. It said that she wanted Megan to have the beach house. It said that she knew I would agree. It said that she hoped I would honor her wishes. It was signed in her handwriting. I looked at that note and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see. I couldn't think. My wife had written that note. My wife had made that promise. And she had never told me. She had never mentioned it. She had gone behind my back and made plans that she knew I would not agree to. I thought about the weeks before she died. I thought about the way she had been so quiet, the way she had spent so much time writing in her journal, the way she had looked at me with something that I thought was love but might have been pity. I thought about all the years we had been married, All the years I had trusted her. All the years I had believed that we were a team. And now I was finding out that she had made plans without me. Plans that were going to tear my family apart and leave me with nothing. I called Megan. It was the first time I had called her in months. She answered on the second ring, and she sounded so calm, so collected, so sure of herself. She asked me if I had received the document. I said I had. She asked me what I was going to do. I told her I didn't know. I told her I was shocked. I told her I couldn't believe her mother had done that without telling me. She said her mother knew that I would never agree. She said her mother knew that I was selfish. She said her mother knew that I was too attached to things and not attached enough to people. She said her mother had wanted her to have that house. Her mother had wanted her to build a life there. Her mother had wanted her to be happy. And I was standing in the way of all of that. I was standing in the way of her mother's dying wish. I was standing in the way of her happiness. I was standing in the way of everything good in her life. She said she would not hesitate to take me to court. She said she would not hesitate to make my life a living hell. She said she had nothing to lose because she had already lost her father. He had already chosen a house over his own daughter. I hung up the phone and I sat in my chair and I stared at the wall. I thought about my wife. I thought about all the years we had been together. I thought about the way she used to hold me at night, the way she used to whisper that she loved me, the way she used to make me feel like I was the only man in the world. And now I was finding out that she had kept a secret from me, a big secret, a secret that was going to destroy me. I wanted to be angry at her. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. She was dead. She was gone. And whatever she had done out of love for her daughter. Or at least that's what I told myself. That's what I needed to believe. Because the alternative was too horrible. The alternative was that she had known I would be left alone, and she had chosen to help Megan destroy me. The alternative was that she had stopped loving me somewhere along the way and had just been going through the motions. The alternative was that my entire marriage was a lie, and that was a truth I could not bear to face. I hired a lawyer of my own, a tough old man named Harold who had been practicing law for 40 years. He looked at the note and he shook his head, and he said it didn't hold much weight. It was handwritten and not notarized, and there was no witness, and it wasn't part of a legal will. He said Megan had a weak case. He said she was probably bluffing. He said he could make it go away with a few strongly worded letters. But he also said something else. He said this was going to cost me, not just money. It was going to cost me my daughter. It was going to cost me any chance of reconciliation. It was going to cost me the last thread of connection I had to my family. He said I needed to think carefully about whether I was willing to pay that price. I told him I already had paid that price. I told him my daughter had already made her choice. I told him I had nothing left to lose. He looked at me with something like pity, and he said, "Okay," and he went to work. The legal battle dragged on for months. Megan filed a motion. I filed a counter-motion. We went back and forth. I spent thousands of dollars on legal fees. I spent thousands of hours lying awake at night, wondering if I was doing the right thing. I thought about just giving in. I thought about just handing over the house and walking away and letting her win. But I couldn't. I couldn't let her take the one thing I had left. I couldn't let her push me out of my own life. I couldn't let her win after everything she had done. So I fought. I fought with everything I had, and eventually, I won. The judge ruled in my favor. The note was not legally binding. The beach house was mine. Megan was ordered to pay my legal fees. I won. And I have never felt more like a loser in my entire life. The day after the ruling, I got a letter from Megan. It was not an email. It was a letter on real paper. She said she was done with me. She said I had chosen a piece of property over her. She said I had chosen money over family. She said I had chosen myself over her mother's dying wish. She said she was going to move forward with her life and she was not going to look back. She said she was going to have children someday, and those children would never know their grandfather because he had chosen a house over them. She said she hoped I would be happy in my little cottage on the beach because I would be spending the rest of my life there alone. She said goodbye. She said it was the last time she would ever speak to me. She said I was dead to her. I read that letter, and I felt something inside me break. It wasn't a clean break. It wasn't a snap. It was a slow crumbling, a disintegration, a falling apart of everything I had ever believed about myself and my family and my life.
I had raised that girl. I had loved that girl. I had given her everything, and she had looked at me and seen nothing but an obstacle, a bank account, a barrier to her happiness. I had failed somewhere. I had failed so badly that my own daughter could not see me as a human being. I had failed so badly that my own daughter could not see the years of sacrifice and love and devotion. I had failed so badly that my own daughter had become a stranger. And I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know if it could be fixed. I didn't know if I even wanted to fix it anymore. I went to the beach house one last time. I stood on the porch and I looked out at the water and I thought about everything I had lost. I thought about my wife and the secret she had kept from me. I thought about my daughter and the way she had turned on me. I thought about my son and the way he had disappeared into his own life. I thought about the grandkids I never saw, the holidays I spent alone, the phone that never rang. I thought about all of it, and I realized that I had been living in a fantasy. I had been living in a world where my family loved me and cared about me and wanted me around. But that world had never been real. It had been a construction, a carefully built illusion that I had maintained for decades because I couldn't face the truth. The truth was that I had been a provider, a servant, a tool. And once I was no longer useful, they had set me aside. They had moved on to the next thing.
And I was left with nothing but a pile of memories and a house full of silence. I still live in the same house. The same house where I raised my children. The same house where my wife died. The same house where the silence is so loud I can hear my own heartbeat. I still have the beach house. I go there sometimes. I sit on the porch and I watch the water and I try to remember what it felt like to be loved. I try to remember what it felt like to be part of something. I try to remember the sound of my children's laughter, the weight of my wife's hand in mine, the warmth of a house full of people who were supposed to be my family. But the memories are fading. They are becoming like photographs left in the sun, bleached and blurry and barely there. I am becoming a ghost in my own life. I am becoming a man who was once a father and a husband and a grandfather, but is now just a man. Just an old man in a quiet house with nothing to do and no one to call and nowhere to go. My daughter never spoke to me again. She never called, she never emailed, she never sent a letter. She got married, I know that much. I saw the photos online. A friend of a friend posted them on social media. She looked beautiful. She looked happy. She was wearing her mother's veil. Her mother's veil. The veil that I had paid for. The veil that I had watched my wife wear on our wedding day. She was wearing it, and she was smiling, and she was holding the hand of a man I had never met.
And in the background there were people I didn't know, friends and family, and people who had been chosen, people who had made the cut, people who were invited into the inner circle of her life. And I was not one of them. I was on the outside looking in. I was a stranger watching a stranger get married. I was a ghost haunting the edges of a photograph that did not include me.
I closed the laptop and I sat in the dark, and I felt the loneliness settle over me like a blanket. A heavy blanket that I could not throw off, no matter how hard I tried. My son calls me sometimes, on birthdays, on holidays. He is polite, he is distant. He asks how I am, and I say I am fine, and he says he is glad. And then we run out of things to talk about. I know he has chosen his side. I know he has chosen his sister. I know he thinks I am the villain of this story. The old man who wouldn't give up his house. The old man who couldn't let go. The old man who chose property over people. I don't try to change his mind anymore. I don't try to explain. There is no point. The story has been written. The narrative has been set. And I am the one who lost. I am the one who ended up alone. I am the one who has to live with the consequences. I think about my wife sometimes. I wonder if she knew what would happen. I wonder if she knew that her secret would tear us apart. I wonder if she knew that her daughter would use her dying wish as a weapon. I wonder if she knew that I would end up here, alone, broken, hollow.
I like to think she didn't know. I like to think she was just a mother trying to take care of her daughter. I like to think she loved me until the very end. But I will never know for sure. That is the cruelest part of all of this. The not knowing, the wondering, the endless loop of questions that have no answers. I will never know if my wife truly loved me. I will never know if my daughter ever really saw me. I will never know if my son ever really cared. I will never know, and I will carry that uncertainty with me for the rest of my life. The days are long now. The weeks blend together. The months pass like water through my fingers. I am 71 years old. I am not a young man. I do not have time to rebuild. I do not have time to find new people or make new connections or start a new life. I am too tired. I am too old. I am too broken. I spend my days reading and watching television and walking to the grocery store and back. I spend my nights staring at the ceiling and listening to the silence and wondering if there is any point to any of this. I have no one to leave my things to, no one to inherit my house, no one to scatter my ashes. I am the end of the line. I am the last chapter of a story that will never be told to anyone because no one is left to listen. Sometimes I go to the beach house. I sit on the porch and I look at the water, and I think about the people I used to be, the young husband, the young father.
The man who believed in love and family and the power of sacrifice. I think about how naive I was, how foolish, how desperate to believe that my love would be enough. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. They didn't want my love. They wanted my money. They wanted my house. They wanted my life. And when I wouldn't give it to them, they took something else. They took my dignity. They took my peace. They took my ability to trust anyone ever again. They left me with nothing but a shell, an empty vessel that used to be a man. I still have the note from my wife. I keep it in my desk drawer. I look at it sometimes. I read her words and I try to understand. I try to find the love that must have been there. But all I see is a woman who didn't trust me. A woman who felt the need to go behind my back. A woman who chose her daughter over her husband. I want to forgive her. I want to let go of the anger. But I can't. The anger is all I have left. The anger is what keeps me going. The anger is what reminds me that I am still alive, that I still have something inside me, that I haven't been completely hollowed out. I don't know if that's a healthy way to live. I don't know if that's the right thing to feel. But I can't help it. The anger is my companion now. It sits with me at the kitchen table. It lies down with me at night. It is the only thing that has not abandoned me.
I don't write this story to be pitied. I don't write it to be understood.
I write it because I need to say it out loud. I need to tell someone what happened to me. I need to put the words on a page so that someone somewhere will know that I existed, that I loved, that I lost, that I was destroyed by the people I trusted most in the world. I don't expect anyone to care. I don't expect anyone to remember. I just need to say it. I need to let it out. Because if I keep it inside any longer, I think it will kill me. And maybe that's what I want. Maybe I want it to be over. Maybe I want to stop waking up in the morning and wondering why I am still here. But I can't do that. I can't give up. Not yet. Not while I still have breath in my lungs and blood in my veins. Not while there is still a tiny sliver of hope somewhere deep inside me that things might get better, that someone might come back, that someone might remember that I am their father and that I love them and that I have always